From refugees to math prodigies, from teenagers to home game heroes, these aren't just poker players. They're the most unlikely champions who defied all odds, shattered records, and changed the game forever. Stories so unbelievable, you'll question everything you thought you knew about poker. And it all begins with perhaps the most miraculous story of them all. A man who never played a single hand of poker, facing down the world's best.
My cousins, they died right in front of my eyes. I've been through a lot of emotional torture in the camp.
Almost nobody noticed it happening. Most poker legends fight for years just to be noticed. They chase respect, grind endlessly, waiting for their moment to finally arrive. But then, out of nowhere, someone steps into the arena with no name, no past, no reason for anyone to care. And in just one night, everything changes. Hand after hand, this stranger dismantles veterans, plays without fear, and forces even the most confident pros to fold.
1.5 million.
Jerry's gonna bluff at it.
Yeah, he doesn't push real hard, but he is going to try to bluff Kalmar off the smallish pot.
By the end, nobody's asking, who is this guy anymore? They're asking something far more dangerous. Is this the birth of the next legend? And the wildest part? Almost nobody saw it coming. Jerry Yang was born in Laos right before his father joined the fight with General Vang Pao against the communists. At just 7 years old, Yang was already facing life or death situations. While his family tried to escape through the jungles, the Pathet Lao caught them. An AK-47 was shoved against his head, and he remembers his dad and uncle throwing themselves to the ground, begging the soldiers not to kill the children. They were only spared after promising not to attempt to escape again. One of Yang's most haunting memories came during another escape attempt across the Mekong River. 23 people were crammed into a small wooden boat, while bullets ripped through the air. Kids cried, mothers screamed, and some drowned before his eyes. He would later call it the longest night of his life. The family eventually reached Thailand, but life in the refugee camp was brutal. They lived there for 4 years, losing a brother and a sister to disease and malnutrition. Yang himself nearly died. His father even began funeral preparations before he miraculously recovered. Years later, when ESPN asked if winning the WSOP was his happiest day, Yang said no. Nothing compares to the day they called my father's name. In 1979, the family arrived in Nashville. 48 relatives packed into one apartment. His father found work buffing guitars for $2.35 an hour, while Yang, small and malnourished, entered the 4th grade at age 11. He pushed forward, earning straight A's and even skipping a grade. The family later moved to Fresno. Yang worked nights mopping floors just to afford tuition at Fresno Adventist Academy, where he graduated as valedictorian. He went on to earn a master's in health psychology and dedicated years to helping foster children. The struggles never stopped, but neither did his determination. He even got into medical school, pausing it to serve as a missionary before becoming a psychologist and social worker. And here's the wildest part: Yang had never actually played poker. Growing up in a strict Christian household, even checkers and chess were banned. Poker? That was unthinkable. Crazy, right? And that's exactly why what happens next feels almost impossible. One night in 2005, Jerry was flipping through TV channels when he stumbled across poker on ESPN. Something about the strategy, the psychology, the sheer intensity of it grabbed him. He was hooked instantly. When he told his wife, Sue, about wanting to play, she flat out refused. Having worked in a casino, she had seen gambling ruin too many lives. Jerry, however, struck a deal. He promised Sue he would only spend 5% of his paycheck each month on poker. If he lost it, that was it. He'd have to wait until the next month. That discipline slowly built trust, and Sue eventually shifted from skeptic to his #1 supporter. Jerry never saw himself as a gambler. He was a student of the game. As a former family therapist, he knew how to read people. The nervous twitch, the forced smile, the smallest shift in body language. At the table, those skills became his weapon. Determined to improve, Jerry bought poker books and started playing in small Southern California casinos. Results came slowly, a few minor cashes, the best being third in a $550 event for just under $7,000. Respectable, but far from life-changing. Then came May 2007. Jerry entered a $225 buy-in tournament at Pechanga Casino, and this time, everything clicked. He didn't just run deep, he won it all. That victory gave him more than prize money. It gave him a golden ticket, a seat at the World Series of Poker main event in Las Vegas, the biggest tournament in the world. And what came next would take him from small-time results to a moment the entire poker world would never forget. When Jerry Yang arrived in Las Vegas in 2007, he was a complete rookie, facing more than 6,000 players. This refugee shocked everyone by shoving his chips in again and again, forcing folds and building momentum.
1 million.
Another million from Yang.
1 million.
And Jerry Yang is going to stand up and make it 1 million.
1 million again.
He loves to say 1 million.
He likes that figure.
Against the odds, he made the final table, starting with the second shortest stack. The night before, he had meditated, promising to play fearless and aggressive poker. Under the lights, that's exactly what he did. One of the first big moments came when Yang picked up pocket jacks against Lee Child's pocket queens. After a series of raises, Childs bet into Yang on a dry flop. Without hesitation, Yang shoved all in.
I'm all in.
And Yang comes over the top. Wow!
Childs, after agonizing, folded his queens face up.
And he folds the queens.
I don't like the laydown. I don't like him showing the cards.
Yang dragged in a massive pot of nearly 20 million chips, his confidence now undeniable. Moments later, Yang tangled with Philip Hilm. Holding pocket aces, he pressured Hilm at every turn until an all-in shove forced Hilm to fold his weak draw. That hand catapulted Yang into the chip lead with 25 million. And then, not even a full orbit later, Yang struck again, this time holding ace-king against Hilm's suited connectors. The flop hit both, but Yang's top pair dominated. When Hilm shoved on the turn, Yang called instantly, and the river sealed Hilm's fate. The man who started the day with the biggest stack was suddenly the first one eliminated. The crowd went wild, gasps, cheers, and applause echoing through the room as Yang stacked up over 44 million chips, more than a third of everything in play. From there, he went on a tear, eliminating 4 opponents in quick succession, while South Africa's Raymond Rama took care of another. By 5:30 p.m., it looked like the tournament was barreling toward the finish line. After just 60 hands, only 4 players remained, and everyone thought it would all end in record time. But instead of speeding up, the game hit a wall. The final 4 tightened up, folding hand after hand, none of them willing to risk it all with so much money at stake. That's when Jerry Yang began to stand out. Sitting on a big stack, he shifted gears and went on the attack. While the others played cautiously, Yang played fearlessly. He raised, re-raised, and leaned hard on his table position, forcing his opponents into tough spots. His calm, deliberate presence made him unreadable, much like Phil Hellmuth, and the other players struggled to figure him out. After a long stretch of careful maneuvering, the tension finally broke. On the 107th hand, Alex Kravchenko shoved all in with ace-king. Yang called with pocket eights and hit trips, sending Kravchenko to the rail just before 1 a.m. 45 minutes later, Yang struck again. This time, it was Raymond Rama who pushed back, re-raising to 8.6 million pre-flop. Yang called, and the flop came ace, jack, and 8. After a series of bets, Rahame went all in, holding kings.
And he moves the rest of his chips into the pot.
Yang made the call with ace-5, pairing his ace to send Rahame home in third with over $3 million. With that, Yang entered heads-up play, holding a staggering 5-1 chip lead and more than 100 million in front of him. The first player in World Series of Poker history to reach that mark. His opponent, Tuan Lam, had just 20 million, but he wasn't about to go quietly. For more than 2 hours, the two battled hand after hand. The blinds were monstrous, 400,000 to 800,000 with a 100,000 ante. Numbers so high, they stunned even the commentators. Both men had already endured over 70 hours of poker, and yet the fight raged on past 3 a.m. Finally, the last hand arrived. Lam shoved all in with ace-queen of diamonds, while Yang snapped him off with pocket eights. The flop brought a queen, giving Lam the lead, and the Canadian flag he waved in excitement seemed to signal a comeback. But fate had other plans. A 7 landed on the turn, followed by a 6 on the river, giving Yang a straight. Just like that, Jerry Yang became the 2007 World Series of Poker champion, walking away with $8 million after crushing the final table. A happy ending? Far from it. what happens next turns this victory on its head. Just as the world crowned him a champion, things began to unravel. In March 2013, the IRS announced it was auctioning off Yang's belongings to cover unpaid taxes, including his prized 2007 WSOP main event bracelet, the custom Quorum watch he won with it, and other luxury jewelry. For any poker champion, losing the bracelet is like losing the crown. By April, a 50-year-old sports collector bought the bracelet for $30,000, far less than Jamie Gold's or Peter Eastgate's. The buyer even had IRS paperwork confirming it was seized from Yang. The watch, worth over $9,000 and engraved with 2007 WSOP main event final table, went along with it. Looking back, Yang admitted part of his downfall came from his generosity. He gave large sums to charities, tithes, relatives, and even started a restaurant before paying taxes. Though he paid nearly $1 million in state taxes, he still owed almost $572,000 in federal taxes, plus $170,000 in back taxes. He cited bad financial advice and the 2008 banking crisis, which made even accessing his own money impossible. The fallout brought criticism. In 2014, former champ Joe Hashim accused Yang and Jamie Gold of destroying the legacy of the world champ. Yang was stunned, defending himself by saying his tax troubles had nothing to do with poker. That's my personal issue. Despite the controversy, Yang pushed forward. In 2015, he opened Dynamite Grill in Las Vegas, but shut it down when his father was diagnosed with colon cancer, choosing instead to be his full-time caregiver. After his father's passing, Yang skipped the 2016 WSOP and devoted himself to missionary work across Laos, Vietnam, and Thailand. Back home, he shifted focus to Fresno, opening Shobu Japanese Cuisine in 2019. The restaurant quickly became a local favorite with glowing reviews. After more than 16 years in the business, Yang has begun talking about retirement, dreaming of more time for family, travel, and giving back. Jerry Yang's journey is a reminder that fame and fortune are fleeting, but faith, family, and resilience endure. Through every setback, he's rebuilt, and maybe, just maybe, one day, he'll return to the final table. Jerry Yang proved that anyone could become a champion. But what about the next generation? The quiet, methodical players who studied the game in the digital age? This is where our story takes an unexpected turn. Picture this. You're a student barely out of your teens, suddenly sitting across from some of the toughest players in poker. No fame, no big reputation, just grit and determination. That was the reality for one German newcomer in 2011. With millions on the line and legends at the table, most thought he'd crumble under the pressure. Instead, he stunned everyone. What came next was a masterclass in strategy and an unforgettable run that saw a student outlast the pros and walk away with a life-changing fortune. This is the unbelievable story of Pius Heinz. Pius Heinz was born on May 4th, 1989, in Bonn, Germany, and grew up in the small village of Oddendorf. For most of his childhood, he lived a regular life. Nothing unusual, but in high school, everything changed when he stumbled across poker. Watching high-stakes poker and the World Series of Poker on German television lit a spark. He began to wonder if he could be part of that world. At first, Heinz wasn't ready to face the pros. He started small, playing casual games with friends. That's when he realized something crucial. Poker wasn't just luck, but strategy, psychology, and patience. From that moment, he threw himself into learning the craft. When he tested his skills online, he signed up as Masta P89. Starting from a free $50 bankroll from PokerStrategy.com, Heinz grinded low-stakes tables, sharpened his play, and turned it into real money. Eventually, his online success earned him over $700,000. Meanwhile, he studied business psychology at Fresenius University of Applied Sciences in Cologne, but poker had already taken over. And yes, after just 2 semesters, he quit to chase the game full-time. Quickly, he proved it was the right choice, winning $61,000 in a full-tilt poker Sunday mulligan, then $30,000 in a PokerStars event. But success wasn't a straight line. 6 months before the 2011 World Series of Poker, Heinz hit a brutal downswing. Loss after loss left him doubting himself. The grind was draining, and live poker felt slow and boring. He told himself if the WSOP didn't go well, he'd quit and go back to school. That all changed in early 2011 when Heinz finally took a shot at live tournaments, and it paid off instantly. In a $1,500 no-limit hold'em event in Las Vegas, he battled through a tough field to reach the final table, earning $83,286. More importantly, he proved he could outplay the pros. Just weeks later, Heinz entered the ultimate stage, the $10,000 World Series of Poker main event. What began as a TV dream in Germany had now become his reality. The 2011 main event wasn't just another poker tournament, it was the crown jewel of the World Series, the one every player dreamed of winning, with 6,865 players from 85 countries chasing a $64 million prize pool. Day 1 was split into 4 sessions, and Heinz chose 1A, ready to go home early if things went badly. Instead, it became the start of the most incredible ride of his life. From the get-go, the challenge was enormous. Heinz battled through the third largest field in poker history, each day surviving thousands of opponents. By day 8, he was nearly out, short-stacked and clinging to hope. Then came a turning point, eliminating Sam Barnhart in 17th place, followed by a dramatic clash with Andrei Petachuk, where Heinz won a huge pot and then knocked him out entirely. For a moment, he was flying high with over 25 million chips, but poker has a way of cutting hot runs short. A tough stretch against John Hewitt saw him lose 3 big pots, his stack falling below 10 million. Suddenly, he was all in for his tournament life. King-Jack against Hewitt's Ace-King. On the brink of elimination, Heinz hit a miracle straight on the river to double up. That lifeline carried him to the final table in 7th place with just over 16 million chips. And just like that, the 22-year-old German now found himself among the November 9, surrounded by pros with bigger stacks and bigger reputations. When he returned to Vegas 4 months later, he wasn't just the underdog, he was practically invisible, written off as someone who'd fold under the bright lights. With chip leader Martin Stashko and Ben Lamb holding position over him, few believed his aggressive 3- and 4-bet strategy could hold up. Most thought he'd be lucky to survive the first night, but Heinz wasn't rattled. All he needed was one double up to flip the script. If there was ever a poker Cinderella story waiting to be written, P.S. Heinz seemed destined to play the part. It was a wild opening day at the final table, the kind of night where you could feel the tension in your bones. Nearly 8 hours of high-stakes action sent 6 players packing, but for Heinz, it became the ride of a lifetime. He had started 7th in chips, but by the end of the night, the young German had clawed his way to the top. That left 3 heavy hitters, Heinz, Ben Lamb, and Martin Stashko. The Penn and Teller Theater buzzed with energy, poker finally feeling alive again after the dark days of Black Friday and the Full Tilt scandal, but the shocks came fast. Ben Lamb, the man many believed was the best tournament player in the world, was gone in the blink of an eye. On the very first hand of 3-handed play, he made a risky move with King-Jack, trying to push Martin Stashko off a pot. Stashko shoved back with pocket 7s, and Lamb was trapped. After losing the hand, his stack was shattered. 3 hands later, with almost nothing left, he shoved Queen 6 into Stashko's pocket jacks. Just like that, the Las Vegas star was out in 3rd place. That left Europe to claim the crown, Germany's P.S. Heinz against the Czech Republic's Martin Stashko. Before play even began, Heinz had admitted that if someone had offered him 2nd place, back when he was in 7th, he would have taken it in a heartbeat. Now here he was, battling for the World Championship. The heads-up duel was a war of attrition. For over 6 hours, the two traded blows, neither willing to give an inch. Heinz came out firing, taking 8 of the first 12 hands, raising relentlessly, applying pressure like a seasoned pro. But Stashko wasn't folding. He fought back with perfectly timed bluffs and even built a 2-1 chip lead at one point. The theater echoed with chants and songs, sounding more like a World Cup soccer match than a poker game, as the crowd urged them on. Finally, after more than 100 hands, the turning point arrived. With Ace-Queen, Heinz shoved on a King 10-7 board. Stashko called with Queen 9. The turn and river blanked, and Heinz doubled up in a monster pot, flipping the script entirely. Suddenly, Stashko was the one on life support. A few hands later, it was all over. Stashko went all in with 10-7, only to collide with Heinz's Ace-King. The board didn't help, and as confetti rained down, Heinz dashed to his cheering section, completely swept up in the moment. At just 22, he became the first German to win the WSOP main event, pocketing $8.7 million, the third largest prize in the tournament's history. But beyond the money, he claimed the ultimate poker honor, the gold and diamond bracelet. After his incredible WSOP victory in 2011, Heinz stepped into the whirlwind of being poker's newest world champion. He traveled the globe representing poker stars, embracing his role as the face of the game. His post-championship run began in Barcelona, where he won the European Poker Tour Turbo Bounty for over 17,000 euros. In Prague, he made another deep run, finishing 23rd. By early 2012, Heinz was still riding the wave. At the PokerStars Caribbean Adventure in the Bahamas, he cracked another top 5 finish, earning nearly $46,000. That summer, he returned to Las Vegas for the World Series, eager to prove himself again. The results weren't as spectacular, small cashes in a couple of events, but his presence alone made headlines. Later that year, he finished third in a high roller in Prague, walking away with another €60,000 payday. But then, the shine started to fade. By 2013, Heinz looked a little rusty. At the WSOP, he only managed an 11th, 20th place finish, and though he popped up again at an event in Vienna the following year, it was clear something had changed. His deep run in San Remo showed flashes of brilliance, but it also came with a telling confession. Sitting on the casino steps with a cigarette, Heinz admitted that poker no longer held the same pull. He wasn't chasing titles anymore. He was playing when he felt like it, and only because his new girlfriend, German poker presenter Natalie Hoff, encouraged him to join her at events. That honesty gave fans a glimpse of where his heart really was. Heinz wasn't wired for the constant grind, the endless travel, and the heavy spotlight. He enjoyed the game, but on his own terms. What once was a full-time career had now become a hobby, a pastime rather than a pursuit. Then came 2016. His surprise returned to form. At King's Casino in Rozvadov, he captured the Eureka Poker Tour Super High Roller, defeating a tough field and collecting €44,814. The victory pushed his career earnings past $9 million, cementing his place near the top of Germany's all-time money list. But even in victory, Heinz made it clear. This wasn't a comeback story. He said flatly that he didn't play much anymore and was simply taking it easy. And after that, P.S. Heinz practically vanished. His PokerStars sponsorship ended, his tournament appearances slowed to a trickle, and his name quietly faded from poker conversations. He had given the game its fair share of brilliance and drama, then stepped away without looking back. What made Heinz so fascinating wasn't just how he won, but how he walked away. At 22, he had the world at his feet, millions in the bank, and the chance to become one of the all-time greats. Instead, he chose happiness over fame, privacy over pressure. Fans often wonder what could have been if he had stayed in the grind, battling the game's best year after year. Would he have become a legend? Or would the weight of expectations have crushed him? No one knows for sure. What is certain, though, is that for one unforgettable moment in 2011, P.S. Heinz was poker's king, and then he chose to write his story differently. P.S. Heinz chose to walk away from the spotlight, but he wasn't the first young champion to question the price of fame. Just a few years earlier, another 22-year-old made history, only to discover that winning everything came with a cost he never expected.
In a game packed with loud personalities and big egos, he was the complete opposite. Just 22 years old, no media buzz, and zero interest in fame. But when the pressure hit its peak, he pulled off one of the most legendary performances poker had ever seen. So how did this quiet, unassuming math nerd conquer the biggest stage in poker?
This is the moment 22-year-old Peter Eastgate steps into poker history.
This is the story of the 22-year-old who didn't want fame, but still outscored everyone. Born in 1985 in Odense, Denmark, Peter Eastgate was just a regular kid growing up in a quiet suburb called Dalum. But then came the poker boom in the early 2000s, and suddenly, everything changed. Denmark caught the poker fever, and the corridors of St. Knud's Gymnasium buzzed with conversations about the game. That's where Peter first got hooked, thanks to his classmates. What started as friendly home games quickly became something much bigger. Peter, a math lover with a thing for psychology, found poker endlessly fascinating. It wasn't just luck and cards, it was mind games, numbers, and reading people. He started learning the game bit by bit, sharpening his skills while still hitting the books. After high school, he enrolled at Aarhus University to study finance. But the balance didn't last long. See, Peter had already made his first online poker deposit and had even broken even that first year. No small feat for a beginner. As the wins slowly began piling up, it became clear that school and poker weren't going to mix. In his own words, his time in university mostly consisted of surviving on one pizza a day, hiding in his dorm, and dodging responsibilities. The internet was terrible, the motivation was worse, and poker was calling louder than any lecture could. Eventually, he packed up and moved back to Odense, got himself a proper setup, and dove into poker full-time. In 2005, at just 20 years old, he dropped out of college and officially turned pro. He focused hard on short-handed and heads-up high-limit online cash games. $200 per $400 stakes. The real deal. Before long, he'd built up a reputation as one of Denmark's strongest internet players, even racking up a bankroll of $200,000. By 2007, Peter wasn't just playing, he was teaching. He tried to coach his younger brother, and together they threw $2,000 into a Ladbrokes account, dreaming of turning it into something big. But after one brutal Friday night session where they lost half the money, his brother bailed. Peter didn't. Fueled by frustration, he kept grinding, still using that same account. It was technically against the rules, but he stood by it. He was doing all the work, making all the plays, and back then, a lot of pros were operating with similar gray area tactics. That weekend turned into an absolute heater. Peter started crushing games, moving up in stakes, and grinding like crazy. He even landed himself on a poker leaderboard that scored him a free cruise and a WSOP package. But after losing half his bankroll that year, he made a tough call. He sold the WSOP package for cash instead of the heading to Vegas. Still, he had a strong year on the live circuit, making the final table at the Irish Open and cashing in a bunch of European Poker Tour events, including one right in his backyard at EPT Copenhagen. All that momentum was building towards something huge. In 2008, Peter set out to compete on poker's biggest stage, the World Series of Poker main event. He signed up through Ladbrokes Poker and headed to Vegas as part of Team Ladbrokes. Now, the 2008 main event? That was a war zone. Thousands of players flooded into Las Vegas, all in pursuit of the same dream. A staggering $9.1 million top prize. The pressure was insane, the competition brutal, and after days of grinding through the madness, only 9 players were left standing. The now iconic November 9. Among them stood Peter. He entered the final table in 4th place with 19.7 million chips, trailing behind big names like Dennis Phillips, Ivan Demidov, and Scott Montgomery. This wasn't just a game anymore. It was a made-for-TV moment. The WSOP took a bold step that year and paused the tournament for a few months before the final table, building hype like never before. When the final table resumed, everyone had eyes on Kelly Kim as the likely first elimination due to his short stack, but poker had other plans. Instead, Craig Marquis was the first to bust, losing in brutal fashion after flopping a set of sevens, only to get cracked by a runner-runner straight. Kim followed soon after, and then came the fall of David Chino Ream. Despite getting it in good with Ace-King against Eastgate's Ace-Queen, the flop crushed his hopes, and he was out in 7th place with a $1.77 million consolation. Dara Suharto was next, exiting in 6th. Then came a heartbreaker for Scott Montgomery. After losing a major pre-flop hand to Demidov, Montgomery was all in with Ace-3 against Eastgate's pocket sixes. The flop and turn looked promising, giving him top pair with an ace, but the river was a gut punch. A 6 that gave Eastgate a full house. Montgomery walked away with just over $3 million. Ilan Schwartz took 4th, and then it was down to 3. That's when Phillips met his end, pushing back at Eastgate's aggression with a semi-bluff on a Jack-4-3 flop. But Eastgate was sitting on a set of 3s and instantly called. By the turn, Phillips was drawing dead and ultimately took 3rd place, earning $4.5 million. That left just 2 players standing, Peter Eastgate with nearly 80 million chips and Ivan Demidov with 57.7 million. The young Dane versus the fearless Russian. This was the clash everyone had been waiting for. The heads-up match was intense, a true tug of war. Early on, Eastgate took control with a strong call against a Demidov river bluff. He crossed the 100 million chip mark while Demidov was left scrambling. But Demidov wasn't done. He fought back, climbing to over 50 million and putting serious pressure on Eastgate with bold re-raises. Still, Eastgate held his ground and delivered a massive blow by catching Demidov bluffing once again, this time with a flush that pulled in a jaw-dropping 44 million chip pot. Demidov's stack continued to dwindle. After another break, the blinds were brutal, 500,000 to 1 million, and he was down to just over 16 million. That's when the final hand played out. On a king-high flop, Eastgate kept the pressure on. Demidov check-raised all in after the turn, trying to turn the tide one last time. But Eastgate had made a wheel straight with ace-5 and wasn't going anywhere. He snap-called, and when the river hit, Demidov's two-pair wasn't enough. It was all over.
Peter Eastgate, congratulations. You are the 2008 World Champion of Poker, and this bracelet is yours.
That final table broke records. Over 15 and a half hours of high-stakes poker stretched across nearly 3 days. And when the dust settled, Peter Eastgate stood alone.
22-year-old Peter Eastgate steps into poker history.
At only 22, he became the youngest champion in WSOP main event history, breaking Phil Hellmuth's long-held record. He walked away with $9.1 million and the legendary Golden Diamond WSOP bracelet, securing his place in poker history. The poker world was in shock. Eastgate had achieved the ultimate dream, winning it all on his very first deep run. People figured he was on the fast track to poker superstardom. I mean, the money, the fame, the big sponsorship deals, it was all right there, waiting for him. But here's the twist. The young Dane never really got comfortable in that spotlight. You see, after Peter's jaw-dropping win at the 2008 World Series of Poker, he quickly became a regular fixture on the international poker circuit, and it didn't take long before PokerStars signed him to a high-profile sponsorship deal. That meant he was now representing the online giant at major tournaments around the globe. In early 2009, Eastgate hit the ground running at the PokerStars Caribbean Adventure, cashing in 2 events and even winning one for a cool $343,000, but his real showstopper came a few months later at the EPT London main event. There, he battled his way to a remarkable second-place finish, walking away with over £500,000, roughly $843,000. He even made another deep run in the WSOP that same year, finishing 78th, which was one of the strongest main event title defenses of the decade. Then came 2010, and although Eastgate secured another strong result with a 5th-place finish at the NBC National Heads Up Championship, things were beginning to change behind the scenes. The pressure, the travel, the expectations, it all started taking a toll. That summer, when the WSOP kicked off, Eastgate was nowhere to be found. Instead of grinding it out in Vegas, he was in South Africa, soaking up the excitement of the World Cup with fellow pro JC Alvarado, and then came the shocker. On July 6, 2010, Eastgate made a public announcement that he was stepping away from the game. He explained that when he turned pro, his main goal had been to become financially independent. And after winning the main event, he had achieved that. The hunger that once fueled his rise just wasn't there anymore. In a candid blog post, Eastgate opened up about his loss of motivation and his desire to rediscover what he really wanted from life. He wasn't just stepping back from poker, he was pressing pause on everything to figure out who Peter Eastgate was beyond the felt. But behind that decision was something even more personal. Around late 2009, Eastgate had fallen deep into the world of sports betting. What started as a weekend hobby quickly spiraled into something much darker. Over about 8 or 9 months, he lost between $500,000 and $700,000. Then came the 2010 World Cup. He set a stop-loss limit at $500,000, but by the time the quarterfinals rolled around, he had already dropped $1.2 million. And just when it couldn't get worse, he bet another $500,000 that Spain wouldn't win. And of course, they did. It was a breaking point. Emotionally drained and financially battered, Eastgate decided not to return to Vegas. Even with a sponsorship deal that would have let him play for free, he chose to walk away. He later admitted he'd become a degenerate gambler, with his mood constantly yo-yoing based on how he was running. whether in poker or sports betting. Something had to change. So Peter Eastgate pulled the plug. He quit the games, the lifestyle, the fame, all of it. And then he did something that truly stunned the poker community. In November 2010, he put his WSOP main event bracelet up for auction on eBay, not out of desperation, but for charity. All proceeds went to UNICEF. The bracelet, made of 18-karat white gold and encrusted with 291 diamonds, fetched an impressive $147,500. While some fans saw it as a generous and noble gesture, others thought it was a slap in the face to poker. Poker legend Tony G even joked about buying it and turning it into a dog collar. But Eastgate stood firm. To him, the bracelet was just a trophy sitting in a drawer. He had no emotional attachment to it, and if he could turn it into something that helped others, why not? Even though he stepped away, Peter never fully closed the door on poker. In early 2011, he announced he'd be playing the EPT Copenhagen and the NBC Heads Up Championship, both sponsored by PokerStars. He was clear, though, this wasn't a comeback, just a few tournaments he felt like playing. PokerStars had supported him through his break, and now he was returning the favor. In 2012, he made a strong showing at the WSOP 1,500 No Limit Hold'em event, finishing fourth for over $209,000. He even joined Team Betfair Poker later that year, but by 2013, his tournament trail had mostly gone cold. His last recorded cash came that year at the ISPT London, where he won just under $4,000. As of 2014, his total live tournament earnings had crossed $11.2 million. In 2015, he surprised fans by registering for the WSOP main event again. Not as a serious return, but just for fun while vacationing in Vegas. By then, it was clear that poker was no longer the center of his world. Eastgate has since admitted he no longer believes he could keep up with today's hyper-aggressive online game. He's joked that if he had been born 10 years later, he probably wouldn't have even made it as a pro. Instead, he's explored other careers, engineering, teaching, though none stuck. These days, Eastgate lives a simple life back in Denmark. He told ESPN that extravagant living was never his thing. His expenses are low, his lifestyle modest, and he's perfectly content. As he put it, his life now feels like one long, peaceful Sunday, and he wouldn't have it any other way. Tens of thousands of poker players around the world dream of living the kind of life Peter Eastgate once had. Think about it. Millions in winnings, big-name sponsorships, and the kind of freedom most people can only imagine, traveling the globe and making a living from the game they love. On the surface, it looked like Eastgate had hit the jackpot, both literally and figuratively. But behind all the flashing lights and final tables, his story had a quieter, more complicated layer. Sure, he could have stuck around, maybe snagged a few more titles, stacked that bankroll even higher. But at what cost? The non-stop grind, the pressure to keep performing, the mental wear and tear, it's not for everyone. And Eastgate? He knew that. This wasn't some crash and burn story, it was a thoughtful decision. He stepped away not because he had to, but because he wanted to. He chose peace of mind over poker fame, and honestly, when you hear him talk about it, it sounds like he made the right decision for himself.
While some champions struggled with the weight of their crown, others dreamed of just one shot at glory. And in 2021, the ultimate underdog proved that sometimes the most dangerous player at the table is the one with nothing to lose.
Imagine playing casual poker at your kitchen table every week with a few buddies. Then suddenly, you're on the biggest stage in the world, outplaying full-time pros for millions. That's exactly what happened to one man. No coach, no sponsors, and at one point, barely a chip to his name.
One big blind, this amateur Holmes now with 34 million chips from the 475,000 he had earlier on this day 7.
Don't need to be a pro, never give up, anything can happen.
His name, George Holmes, and his story? It's one of the wildest the poker world has ever seen. How does a total underdog come that close to winning it all? The answer might just blow your mind. George Holmes, originally from New Jersey but now living in Atlanta, Georgia, seemed like your everyday family man. He had a good job as an executive at a payment processing company, a loving wife and 2 kids, a son and a daughter. Life was steady, nothing too flashy, nothing. But then there was poker, his escape, his weekly shot of adrenaline. George wasn't out grinding the tournament circuit or
pretty much what George Holmes told us as well.
Diving into solver charts at 2 a.m. He was a home game hero, plain and simple. He first got hooked back in 1999, way before poker hit the mainstream. By 2000, he was playing regularly with coworkers. Just low-stakes stuff, like 25 cents to 50 cents games. But over time, those casual nights turned into something more serious. Tournament poker? Not really his thing. The only big event he ever really cared about was the World Series of Poker main event. And in 2019,
the numbers at the 2019,
he shocked everyone with a deep run, finishing 213th and pocketing over $50,000. At that point, it was his one and only recorded live tournament cash. Fast forward to 2021, and against all odds, George Holmes, a casual home game player, found himself heads up at the WSOP main event final table, facing off against one of the world's best. It was the ultimate underdog moment, and everyone watching had the same question. How on earth did this guy end up here? You see, after the chaos of 2020 and the COVID-19 pandemic that shut down live poker around the world, the World Series of Poker came roaring back in 2021 with one of the most ambitious comebacks the game had ever seen.
The bubble burst.
First, there was the WSOP online series over the summer, hugely popular as expected.
Your final 9 are set. This is the 2021 World Series of Poker main event.
But the real buzz started building in the fall. That's when the WSOP returned to its roots, live action in Las Vegas. The 2021 World Series of Poker officially kicked off on July 1st with the online series, but the spotlight turned to Vegas when the live series began on September 30th. This wasn't just a return, it was a record breaker. With 88 gold bracelet events on the schedule, it marked the biggest World Series of Poker ever held. But the real showstopper, the one everyone had marked on their calendars, was the $10,000 no-limit Hold'em main event. Over the course of registration, 6,650 players threw their hats in the ring, each dropping $10,000 for a shot at poker immortality. The energy inside the Rio was electric, and the prize pool? A jaw-dropping $62 million. It ended up being the 10th biggest main event field in WSOP history. First place came with a staggering $8 million payday and the legendary WSOP bracelet, decked out in jewels. But by day 7, things were already looking rough for George Holmes. Early into the second level, he tried to eliminate Jack Oliver, but ended up on the losing side of the showdown. Left with just 475,000 chips, barely more than a single big blind, Holmes was hanging by a thread. But he wasn't done yet. Next hand, Arkady Onekul raised to 625,000. Mitchell Halverson called, and Holmes, sitting in the hijack, pushed his tiny stack all in. Both blinds called. The flop brought the 9 of hearts, 7 of diamonds, and 3 of hearts. Onekul bet 650,000, chasing out the others and taking the side pot. For the main pot, Onekul showed 9-8. Holmes revealed 9-6. The turn was the Jack of diamonds, the river the 6 of hearts. That river 6 gave Holmes 2 pair and the double up, climbing him back over 2 million. His rail erupted. "Let's go, George!" And the fire was lit. Just a few hands later, he went all in again with 4 other players, scooped another pot, and pushed his stack past 2 million. Then came the run. Within 90 minutes, Holmes surged to 16 million. By dinner break, he was sitting at 20 million. And by the end of level 4, he had amassed more than 32 million, a staggering comeback. As day 7 of the World Series of Poker main event stretched past midnight in Vegas, Holmes was locked in. With a massive stack of 68 million chips in front of him, he was just a hair away from the top spot, shooting up to 3rd place and making serious waves at the table. At the final table, Corey Aldemir held a commanding chip lead, but the real drama unfolded in the fierce battle between George Holmes and Jack Oliver. The two battled back and forth like heavyweight boxers, trading pots and trying to earn the chance to take on Aldemir for the bracelet. Every time Holmes chipped up, Oliver punched right back. It was tense, tactical, and relentless. Neither could pull too far ahead of the other, and Aldemir stayed comfortably in front. Then came a big hand that helped Holmes pull away. Oliver raised to 1.2 million from the cutoff, and Holmes re-raised to 3 million from the button. After the blinds folded, Oliver called, and they saw a flop of 8 of hearts, 5 of hearts, and 4 of diamonds. Both checked. The turn brought the 4 of clubs, pairing the board. Oliver checked again, and Holmes put out a bet of 2.4 million. Oliver called. The river was the 2 of diamond. Oliver checked for the 3rd time, and Holmes dropped a 5 million chip bomb in the middle. Oliver tanked for nearly 2 minutes before folding. As Holmes stacked the pot, someone on the rail shouted, "Yeah, George! He's a problem!" A noticeable upgrade from the earlier whispers of, "He's becoming a problem." Not long after, Oliver's run came to an end. Down to his last 36 million chips, he shoved from the small blind with ace-8 of clubs. Holmes thought it over, then called from the big blind with queen-jack of spades. The board ran out in Holmes's favor, with a jack landing on the turn to give him the winning hand. Oliver was eliminated in 3rd place, cashing out with a well-earned $3 million. And just like that, it was down to 2. Aldemir versus Holmes. The final showdown between Aldemir and George Holmes was nothing short of electric, a true David versus Goliath moment in the poker world. On one side, Aldemir, the calm and calculated German pro with over $13 million in live tournament earnings. On the other, George Holmes, the underdog from Atlanta, a recreational player whose only previous tournament cash came in the 2019 WSOP main event. This was his 2nd ever live tournament cash, and somehow he was sitting across from one of the best in the world, heads up for poker's most prestigious title. The final duel began with Aldemir holding a commanding chip lead, $261.9 million, to Holmes's $137.4 million. But this wasn't the first time Holmes had been counted out. Just days earlier, on day 7, he had clawed his way back from fewer than 2 big blinds. That same grit showed up again here. Right from the first hand, Holmes made it clear he wasn't going down without a fight. He chipped away at Aldemir's lead with gutsy plays and perfectly timed aggression. At one point, he even flipped the tables and grabbed the chip lead himself. For the first time in nearly 2 days, Aldemir was no longer in control.
Completing his own chip and a chair to a championship saga.
For a moment, it looked like Holmes might actually pull off one of the greatest upsets in main event history. But Aldemir didn't blink. He'd been under pressure before, and now, that experience was about to be pushed to the limit. Holmes, sitting on the button, kicked off the action with a raise to $5.2 million. Corey Aldemir, cool and calculated, defended his big blind. The flop came. King of diamond, 9 of spades, and 4 of diamond. Both players checked, keeping things cautious. Then came the turn, the 2 of clubs. This time, Aldemir made a move, firing $4.4 million into the pot. Holmes wasn't going anywhere just yet and made the call. The river brought the 5 of hearts, and Aldemir turned up the heat with a big bet of $15.8 million. That pressure was enough. Holmes folded. On the very next hand, Aldemir limped in from the button, showing a little change of pace. Holmes responded with a raise to $6 million, and Aldemir made the call. The flop hit. 6 of clubs, 7 of hearts, 7 of diamond. Both checked again, clearly feeling each other out. Then, the turn. The king of diamond. Holmes took the lead with a bet of $8 million, and that was enough to push Aldemir off the hand. Holmes then limped in, and Aldemir checked. The flop ran out. 6 of clubs, 3 of clubs, and 7 of spades. No bets here, just 2 players staring each other down in silence. The turn brought the jack of hearts, and Aldemir broke the silence with a bet of $4.1 million. Holmes called, curious to see the river. The last card, the 9 of clubs, gave Aldemir the green light to fire another big one, $15.5 million. Once again, Holmes laid it down. In the next hand, Aldemir raised to $6 million, and Holmes called. The flop revealed the king of hearts, queen of spades, and 8 of clubs. Holmes checked, and Aldemir wasted no time, putting in a bet of $4.8 million. Holmes folded once more. Despite the pressure and non-stop folds, Holmes wasn't backing down, not even close. He kept things tight, stayed unpredictable, and forced Aldemir to fight for every single chip. And then it all came down to this, the final hand. Holmes opened the action with a raise to $6 million, and right across the table, Aldemir calmly made the call. You could almost feel the tension. It was so thick, you could cut it with a knife. The flop hit the table. 10 of hearts, 7 of spades, and 2 of hearts. Aldemir checked. Holmes didn't back down, firing another $6 million into the pot. After about a minute of thought, Aldemir came back over the top with a check raise to $19 million. Holmes took a moment to weigh his option and made the call. Then came the turn. King of spades, a total game changer. Aldemir went deep into the tank, nearly 2 minutes of dead silence before sliding out a massive bet of $36.5 million. Holmes took about a minute himself, then called again. Now the pot had swelled to over 100 million chips, and the entire Amazon room was holding its collective breath. The river, 9 of clubs. Aldemir checked, setting the trap, or maybe just unsure. But Holmes didn't hesitate. Within 20 seconds, he shoved all in. A jaw-dropping 133 million chips. That was more than the size of the pot. This was the move. It was now or never. Aldemir had only around 10 million more than Holmes. He went into the tank for nearly 3 full minutes. You could feel every second tick by as the crowd leaned forward, and then, finally, he called. Holmes turned over King of Clubs and Queen of Spades. Just one pair. Kings. Strong, but not bulletproof. Aldemir flipped his cards. 10 of diamonds and 7 of diamond. 2 pair. And just like that, it was over.
Wow. Just like that.
Karai Aldemir almost let it go.
Karai Aldemir won the 2021 World Series of Poker main event with one unforgettable call, one legendary hand.
But he is now deservedly the 2021 main event champion.
Holmes, the home game hero, finished second, but what a run it was. He walked away with $4.3 million after nearly being eliminated back on day 7. He captured hearts across the poker world, proving that sometimes the dream isn't just for the pros. Aldemir, now the champion, had high praise for Holmes afterward. He admitted Holmes gave him one of the toughest battles he'd ever faced, saying Holmes ground him down and forced him to fight for every chip. George Holmes may not have taken the title, but in the eyes of countless poker fans, he became something even more powerful, a symbol of what's possible. One of them, a home game warrior who took on the high roller elite and nearly won it all.
George Holmes showed that dreams still come true for everyday players, but the poker world isn't just about quiet determination. Sometimes it's taken by storm by a player with so much charisma and talent, they rewrite what's possible entirely.
Some poker players grind the numbers. Others chase fame. But this guy, he managed to do both, just not in any way you'd expect. Raised more on chessboards and poker chips, and shaped by a unique cultural mix, his journey to poker stardom was anything but ordinary. When he finally hit the big stage, he didn't just win. He stole the show and left the entire poker world buzzing. This isn't your typical underdog story. It's the tale of a brilliant misfit who rewrote the rules and made sure no one would ever forget his name. Sebastian Malaz's story starts in a unique blend of cultures, born to a Polish father and a Kalmykian mother. And if you're wondering where Kalmykia is, you're not alone. It's a small Russian republic that's famous for 2 surprising things. It's mostly Buddhist, and it's one of the world's hidden hubs for chess. That blend of heritage and brainpower pretty much set the stage for what would become a fascinating journey. His parents met while studying in Moscow, and not long after, Sebastian was born, right between 2 brothers. From early on, chess was a big part of his life. He didn't just dabble in it, he competed seriously, even hitting a peak ELO rating of 2214 in 2011. So clearly his mind was wired for strategy from the start. Fast forward to May 2014, Malaz finished his international baccalaureate in Warsaw and aimed high. He applied to several of the UK's top universities to study mathematics and statistics. Oxford even invited him for an interview, and he got offers from some of the best: Imperial College London, Warwick, UCL, and Edinburgh. In the end, he chose Warwick, but Warwick wasn't quite the fit he hoped for. Despite its academic reputation, he felt isolated. He admitted later that he didn't really connect with anyone there. Instead, he spent most of his time in his dorm room, grinding away at online poker and taking regular trips to London to see friends. That early detachment from the typical student life hinted at something deeper. Malaz was built for something a little different. Interestingly, the leap from chess to poker wasn't random. His childhood chess coach had actually played in the World Series of Poker, and that sparked Malaz's curiosity. He saw clear parallels between the 2 games: long hours of intense focus, emotional highs and lows, strategy, and a constant drive to improve. Poker, just like chess, demanded brains, discipline, and strategy. In late 2014, Malaz started testing the waters in live poker tournaments. His first real cash came at an EPT stop in Prague, and that little taste was all he needed. By summer 2015, he was in Barcelona chasing bigger dreams at the EPT main event. Out of nearly 1,700 players, he cracked the top 100 and walked away with $17,757. Not bad for a newcomer. But here's the thing.
Malice wasn't just another poker hopeful. He was a full-on superfan. While studying in London, he'd show up at EPT stops just to breathe the same air as his idols. He took selfies with Jason Mercier, watched Liv Brie play like she was a rock star, and soaked in every second. For him, those events weren't just tournaments, they were holy ground. So when he finally found himself on the other side of the rail, actually in the tournament instead of watching from the sidelines, that alone was a win. But what came next? That's when the fairy tale really kicked off. It all went down in August 2016 at EPT Barcelona, a massive event that attracted 1,785 players and built up a jaw-dropping prize pool of nearly $10 million. First prize? Over $1.2 million. This wasn't just another tournament. This was the biggest EPT ever held at the time. And somehow, in the middle of that giant field, was 21-year-old Malice, unknown, unproven, and totally fearless. And here's the craziest part. Malice didn't buy in directly. He won his seat through a tiny 27-euro satellite on PokerStars. That's basically poker's version of turning pocket change into a golden ticket. Most players would have been happy just to qualify, maybe score a small cash and call it a career highlight. Malice had other plans. He didn't just survive day one, he built momentum. And instead of getting knocked out early like many first-timers, he clawed his way into the money. From there, the ride only got wilder. One by one, more experienced players fell. Malice just kept going, somehow keeping his cool under pressure. Against all odds, he made it to the final table. Now, the final day of the tournament kicked off with a bit of unexpected drama. 7 players at the table instead of the usual 6. That was all thanks to a super late fold by Harcharan Dogra, buying just enough time for one extra player to sneak into the finale. But for the home crowd, the excitement didn't last long. The last Spanish player in the field was the first to be eliminated. Harcharan Dogra struggled to find a good moment to make a move. Sitting in the big blind with just 6 big blinds left, he chose to defend after Thomas DeRoy raised to $450,000 from the cutoff. When the flop came 9 of clubs, 5 of spades, and 2 of hearts, Dogra instantly shoved his remaining 750,000 chips into the middle. DeRoy snap-called. DeRoy had ace of hearts and 4 of spades. Dogra showed 3 of hearts and 2 of clubs. The turn brought the king of diamonds, and the river, 4 of diamonds, gave DeRoy the better pair. Just like that, the local favorite and beloved restaurant owner was out in 7th place, cashing in for a still impressive 230,950 euros. Not long after Dogra hit the rail, Andreas Chakiadakis followed. The Greek player shoved with king of hearts and queen of spades. With no help from the board, Owen's ace-high held up, sending Chakiadakis out in 6th with a 330,290 euro payday. Then came Zorlu Er's turn. The Turkish player defended his big blind with ace of spades and jack of clubs after Yuri Reichenstein raised from the button with 10 of diamonds and 4 of diamonds. The flop was a dream for Reichenstein. Ace of diamonds, king of diamonds, and 3 of diamonds, flopping a flush right out of the gate. Zorlu check-called the flop, did the same when the 10 of clubs hit the turn, and finally went all in when the 6 of hearts landed on the river. But it was too late. Reichenstein's flush held strong, and Zorlu bowed out in 5th place, collecting a massive 431,550 euros. With 4 players left, they paused to see if a deal could be struck, but after some talk, nothing came of it. No deal was reached, and play continued. Thomas DeRoy, who had earlier knocked out Dogra, now found himself short-stacked after a brutal hand against Adam Owen. Left with just 3 big blinds, he shoved all in from early position with ace of spades and 7 of clubs. Uri Reichenstein made the call with jack of spades and 3 of diamonds. The flop brought a 3, and that small pair was enough to eliminate DeRoy in 4th place. Still, the Dutchman had plenty to smile about. His 535,100 euro payout marked the biggest tournament score of his career. Moments later, Adam Owen was next to go. Malice called from the button with ace of diamonds and 8 of diamonds. Reichenstein in the small blind also called with ace of hearts and 8 of spades. Then came the fireworks. Owen, sitting in the big blind, shoved all 5.6 million of his chips into the pot with queen of diamonds and jack of spades. Malice didn't hesitate. He moved all in over the top, which was enough to get Reichenstein to fold. In Malaz's, ace-high held strong, eliminating Owen in third place for a very respectable €646,250. And just like that, the field had narrowed down to two, Uri Reichenstein and Malaz, ready to battle it out for the title. When heads-up play got underway between Malaz and Reichenstein, the stacks weren't exactly neck and neck. Malaz was slightly behind with 21.35 million, while Reichenstein held the lead at 32 million. Fast forward 6 hours into the grind, and the blinds had climbed to 3,600K with a 100K ante. By then, it was a dead heat. Malaz had chipped up to around 27 million, and Reichenstein wasn't far off with 25.6 million. This battle was heading straight for a photo finish. Then came the hand that decided it all. Malaz, on the button, raised pre-flop. Reichenstein in the big blind chose to just call. The pot sat at about 1.4 million when the flop came. Queen of hearts, jack of spades, and 6 of hearts. Reichenstein led out with a bet of 800,000, and Malaz responded with a raise to 3 million. After a long pause, Reichenstein made the call. On the turn came the 8 of hearts. Reichenstein checked again, and Malaz stayed aggressive, firing out a 5 million chip bet. Reichenstein called, and suddenly the pot ballooned to a massive 17.4 million. Then came the river. Another 8, pairing the board and opening the door to full houses. But Malaz's line, limping pre-flop, raising the flop, betting the turn, and now jamming the river, didn't exactly scream top pair. It looked like he either had the goods or was completely bluffing. Reichenstein checked one last time, hoping to induce a bluff. Instead, Malaz went all in. And in that moment, as Reichenstein dug deep for a decision, Malaz went full showman. He quoted Scotty Nguyen, "You call now, and it's all over, baby."
It was outrageous, maybe even crossing the line, but it was unforgettable. The crowd was stunned, and even the tournament staff seemed unsure how to handle it. Still, it made for unbelievable poker theater. And then, Reichenstein made the call. When Malaz returned to the table, flipped over his cards, and realized he'd just won one of the biggest titles in poker, the emotions came flooding in. He jumped, he yelled, and eventually, he cried. This young online qualifier from Poland, who had entered the tournament as a superfan, was now the EPT Barcelona champion, walking away with €1,122,800. Malaz didn't just win a tournament, he delivered one of the most iconic performances in EPT history. He was unpredictable, emotional, bold, and absolutely unforgettable. Whether you loved him or couldn't believe what you were watching, one thing was certain: Malaz had arrived, and the poker world would never forget it. After settling up with his backers, Malaz walked away with around $500,000, but he wasn't about to go on a spending spree. His plans were pretty low-key: a new phone, a camera, a laptop, and getting his apartment set up in Maastricht, Holland. He still planned to play poker, but nothing wild, just sticking to $1,000 buy-ins and under.
Oh, and here's a cool bit of trivia. In 2017, PokerStars made a major announcement and officially retired the iconic EPT brand and rebranded the tour as the PokerStars Championship and Festival events. After just 1 year, PokerStars brought the European Poker Tour back in 2018 due to overwhelming demand. That brief hiatus made Malaz's victory feel like the end of an era and the start of a new one, though. Fast forward to June 2023, Malaz had another deep run, this time at the World Series of Poker in Las Vegas. Hosted at the Horseshoe and Paris casinos, he finished second in a mystery bounty event at the Wynn, taking home nearly $540,000. Later that year in Prague, at the EPT €3,000 mystery bounty, Malaz showed once again he wasn't just a one-hit wonder. Out of a massive 835-player field, only 16 made it to the final day, and Malaz was leading them all with 3.4 million chips, nearly 70 big blinds. But poker can be brutal. His run ended in 8th place, earning him €31,900. Not the dream finish, but still a strong showing. By 2025, Malaz was no longer just a former champion. He had become a respected name on the poker circuit. At EPT Monte Carlo, he made headlines once again with a deep run in the main event. From a starting field of 1,195 players, he entered day 3 in a fantastic position, third in chips with 1,684,000. He crushed it that day, eliminating serious talent and building momentum. He busted Andras Nemeth with a full house, luring him into an all-in call with just ace-high. Later, he knocked out Josef Chibicek by winning a coin flip with ace-king against pocket queens. Only Kosein Kokistani and Matthew Davenport were ahead of him by the end of play. By the start of day 4, only 52 players remained.
Everyone was guaranteed at least 17,150 euro, but all eyes were locked on the €1,000,000 top prize. If Malice had gone all the way, he would have become only the 4th player in history to win multiple live EPT titles, joining an exclusive club alongside Victoria Corrin-Mitchell, Mikolaj Pobal, and Mike Watson. But poker can be cruel. Day 4 was a massacre for many of the big names, including Malice. He was eliminated in 42nd place, pocketing 17,150 euro. It wasn't the ending he hoped for, but his reputation as one of the game's sharpest minds only grew stronger. Sebastian Maliz's story is nothing short of inspiring. From a wide-eyed poker fan watching live streams to becoming an EPT champion and consistent deep runner on the circuit, he's shown the world what true passion, patience, and a little flair can do. Whether he's holding a trophy or telling jokes from the top of a bar stool, Malice isn't just a great player. He's a proper poker legend in the making.
Sebastian Malice proved that brilliance and showmanship could conquer the felt. But what if you could win without even looking at your cards? What if the game wasn't about the hand you were dealt, but about reading the souls sitting across from you?
What if I told you that someone once won a poker tournament without looking at their cards even once? An 18-year-old girl walks into the most prestigious poker event in Europe, surrounded by legends who've been grinding the game since before she was born. She's never played a single live hand in her life, yet somehow she's about to make history that will leave the poker world questioning everything they thought they knew. So how does a Norwegian teenager with zero life experience outsmart the most dangerous minds in poker? Well, to understand that, we need to go back to where it all began. Her journey had been unconventional from the very beginning, but her focus was always on one single thing: understanding people. Her father had taught her basic stud poker when she was young, but what he couldn't have known was that he was unleashing something extraordinary. At 15, when most kids were begging their parents for allowance money, Annette created an account on online poker platforms under the name Annette_15. But here's the thing that separated her from every other wannabe poker player. She never deposited a single cent. Instead, she did something that would become legendary in poker circles. She built her entire bankroll from absolute zero, grinding free roll tournaments where the prize was real money, but the entry was completely free. While other players saw these as waste of time beginner games, Annette saw them as her laboratory, her chance to study human behavior without risking anything. Furthermore, she was developing something that money couldn't buy, an almost supernatural ability to read people through their betting patterns, their timing, their digital tells that most players didn't even know they had. By the time she was 16, she had turned those worthless free roll entries into thousands of dollars. What's more, she had cracked the code that would make her unstoppable. But the poker world was about to witness something that defied all logic. What truly separated Annette from every other online grinder was what happened in July 2007. While most players were obsessing over starting hand charts and probability calculations, Annette decided to prove that poker wasn't really about the cards at all. She entered a $4 buy-in, 180-player sit-and-go tournament on PokerStars with one catch that would become the stuff of poker legend. She played the entire tournament without looking at her hole cards. Not once. Not until the very end, when she peeked at them in a single difficult decision. She won the entire tournament playing completely blind, using nothing but position, betting patterns, and her ability to read the rhythm of the game. When word of this spread through poker forums, it was absolute madness. It shouldn't have been possible, but there was the proof. This wasn't just showing off. This was Annette announcing to the poker world that while they were all playing checkers, she was playing chess 3 moves ahead. The poker establishment was about to get a rude awakening. However, there was still one massive obstacle standing in her way that would change everything. Here's where the story gets even more remarkable. While Annette was demolishing fields online, she was trapped by one simple fact. You had to be 21 to play live poker tournaments in the United States. For most young players, this would have been a devastating roadblock. But Annette's Norwegian passport gave her something else entirely: access to European tournaments where the legal age was 18. When the World Series of Poker announced their first ever European Championship in London with a £10,000 buy-in, Annette didn't hesitate. She had the bankroll, she had the skills, but most importantly, she had something that terrified the old guard. She had absolutely nothing to lose. At 18 years and 364 days old, literally one day before her 19th birthday, Annette walked into the Empire Casino in London's Leicester Square. She sat down at a table filled with poker legends, bracelet winners, and professionals who had been grinding live tournaments since before she was born. But here's what they didn't know. This quiet Norwegian teenager had already played more hands of poker than most of them would play in their entire careers. She had seen every bluff, every betting pattern, every tell that existed in the digital realm. Additionally, she was about to find out if it translated to the felt. What happened next would leave jaws on the floor. What happened over the next 4 days was nothing short of surgical precision disguised as teenage fearlessness. While seasoned pros were playing it safe, calculating pot odds and managing their images, Annette was playing pure, aggressive poker based on reads that seemed to come from another dimension. She built massive stacks with moves that made no sense to traditional poker wisdom, but perfect sense to someone who understood the game at a deeper level. When she 3-bet with suited connectors, it wasn't gambling, it was calculated aggression designed to put maximum pressure on opponents who were used to playing against predictable patterns. The most remarkable thing wasn't just that she was winning, it was how she was winning. She made a move with 7-2 offsuit, literally the worst starting hand in poker, and turned it into a massive pot. She wasn't just playing her cards, she was playing the entire table like a symphony conductor, orchestrating every bet, every fold, every decision to her advantage. The old-timers were starting to sweat. Nevertheless, the real test was still ahead, as the field narrowed to players who had every reason to believe they would outlast this unknown teenager. By the time the tournament reached the final 2 tables, Annette was up against the cream of the crop. John Tabatabai, a respected professional with years of experience. Kenny Tran, a feared tournament grinder. Other legends who had dominated poker long before this Norwegian kid had even learned the rules. But then something extraordinary happened. Annette's stack, which had been commanding all tournament, suddenly took a massive hit. Most young players would have panicked, would have tightened up, would have played scared poker waiting for premium hands. Instead, Annette did what only a true champion would do. She went to war. She cold-shoved AK suited over 2 bets, a move that would have been considered suicide by conservative players but was actually perfect given the situation. She knocked out Kenny Tran with that hand, and in doing so, she sent a message to the entire table. This wasn't luck. This wasn't beginner's fortune. This was pure poker mastery. The most telling moment came when she shoved with a small pocket pair against significant action. It was a move that required ice in her veins and complete confidence in her read, and she was right, again. Yet the ultimate showdown was still waiting, and it would make poker history. When it came down to heads-up play, Annette faced John Tabatabai with everything on the line. The contrast couldn't have been more stark. On one side, a seasoned professional with years of live tournament experience. On the other, a teenager who had never played a live hand of poker before this tournament. In the final hand, Annette held pocket 7s against Tabatabai's 5-6. When the river card fell, it was over. But here's what made the moment even more remarkable. Annette barely reacted. No celebration, no emotion. Just the quiet confidence of someone who had known this moment was inevitable. She had just become the youngest person ever to win a World Series of Poker bracelet, earning £1 million, the largest single event payout for a female player at the time. Furthermore, she did it all one day before her 19th birthday. The poker world would never recover from what they had just witnessed. Annette's victory wasn't just a tournament win, it was a seismic shift that cracked the foundation of professional poker. The old guard, who had dismissed online players as computer jockeys who couldn't handle the pressure of live play, suddenly realized they had been living in the past. She had proven that the internet wasn't just breeding casual players, it was creating killers. Quiet ones who could read souls through betting patterns. Analytical ones who could calculate odds faster than you could blink. And most terrifyingly for the establishment, teenage ones who had no fear because they had nothing to lose. The poker world would never be the same. Annette had opened the floodgates for a new generation of players who would dominate the game for the next decade. However, her own journey was about to take an unexpected turn that nobody saw coming. Over the following years, Annette continued to cash in major live events, accumulating nearly $4 million in tournament earnings. But unlike many poker players who get trapped in the grind, Annette had something more valuable: perspective. As the poker boom cooled and the fields became tougher, Annette began questioning everything. Was this really how she wanted to spend her 20s? Sitting in smoky casinos, playing the same psychological warfare day after day? The game that had once excited her was starting to feel like a prison. The breaking point came gradually. Tournament after tournament, she found herself going through the motions. The passion that had driven her to greatness was fading. She realized that poker had given her everything she needed from it: fame, fortune, and proof that she could conquer any challenge. And yet, just as she reached the height of her powers, she felt like she couldn't breathe. The decision to step away wasn't easy. Millions on the line, and you just leave? How do you abandon the thing that made you famous? But Annette understood something that most poker players never figure out. Knowing when to quit is the ultimate skill. In a move that surprised the poker world, Annette gradually stepped away from the spotlight. She began streaming on YouTube, not poker content, but makeup tutorials. She entered Scrabble competitions. She was building a life beyond the felt, something that many poker professionals never managed to do. Yet her impact on the game remained undeniable. What she had accomplished would echo through poker history forever. But there's one final truth that explains everything. Annette Oberstad didn't just win a bracelet. She rewrote the rules of poker before she was even old enough to play in most casinos. Her victory at the World Series of Poker Europe wasn't just a triumph of talent over experience, but a signal to the entire poker world that the game had changed. She proved that poker wasn't about age, bravado, or even the cards in your hand. It was about understanding people, reading patterns, and having the nerve to trust your instincts under pressure. She didn't need to see her cards to beat you, because she wasn't playing the cards. She was playing you. She showed that fearlessness, intelligence, and emotional insight could beat decades of experience. And sometimes the most dangerous player at the table is the one with nothing to lose and everything to prove.
Annette Oberstad revolutionized the game before she could legally drink, but she wasn't the only prodigy about to shake the poker world to its core. Because waiting in the wings was a kid from Michigan who would prove that sometimes the greatest champions aren't born, they're forged in the digital fires of online poker.
21-year-old Joe Cada made history last week, becoming the youngest World Series of Poker main event champion of all time and taking home $8.5 million.
All in. All in. All in.
And it is time to get aggressive for Cada. All in with those fours. The river card is a 7. Joe Cada doubles up.
Every once in a while, poker gives us a player who feels like they're about to change everything. Daniel Negreanu had that moment. Phil Ivey had it too. And then, another young star stepped onto the World Series of Poker stage, but almost nobody noticed. His story isn't about glitz, fame, or big sponsorship deals. It starts with what looked like a reckless gamble, one that turned out to be a stroke of genius. From endless online grinding to a career-defining leap, his journey feels like history repeating itself. The only difference? This time, nearly everyone overlooked it. You see, for most young poker players, the idea of dropping out of school to go pro usually raises eyebrows, sparks disapproval, and comes with endless warnings. But for Joe Cada, that leap of faith became the very decision that transformed him into a millionaire. Not just any millionaire, one who would eventually sit among poker's elite. Joe's story begins in Shelby Charter Township, Michigan, where he was born on November 18, 1987. Cards were practically woven into his DNA. His mother worked as a blackjack dealer at Detroit's Motor City Casino, so he grew up surrounded by the sounds of chips clinking and cards being shuffled. From day one, the game was in the air he breathed. Like many kids, Joe caught the poker bug early. But unlike most, he wasn't just a dreamer, he had an uncanny gift for the game. It started innocently enough with low-stakes matches against his high school buddies. While others were still fumbling with the basics, Joe was cleaning up the games. He had an instinct for numbers, but more importantly, he could read people like a book. That edge set him apart right away. At just 14, Joe made his first real move toward the big leagues. After scraping together $50 from his busboy job, he convinced his mom to help him set up an online poker account. She wasn't thrilled, but Joe pitched it like this. Instead of spending his money on movies or dances, he wanted to invest it in poker. Reluctantly, she agreed. What happened next changed everything. Joe didn't just keep playing, he kept winning. That first $50 was the only money he ever had to deposit. The rest was pure profit. Under the online screen name JCada99, Joe got to work. At 15, he was grinding out tiny stakes, 5-cent, 10-cent games, on party poker. But his climb was fast and relentless. Within 2 years, he was competing at the site's highest stakes, regularly battling against seasoned professionals twice his age. By the time he turned 18, Joe was ready for a bigger challenge. He He switched to Ultimate Bet, where he jumped straight into serious games. $5 per $10, $10 per $25, and even $25 over $50 no-limit hold'em. His rise looked unstoppable until disaster struck. Joe became one of the many victims of the infamous Ultimate Bet scandal. Cheated out of $150,000. It was a crushing setback, one that would have pushed most young players to quit. But Joe didn't. Instead, he swallowed the loss, stepped back down to smaller stakes, and rebuilt his bankroll from scratch. Within months, he was back in the fight. By 19, he was making serious money, so much that college started to feel like a distraction. Joe had been attending Macomb Community College, but as poker took over, he found himself skipping classes. Eventually, he dropped out altogether. To keep playing, he had to travel to places where he could legally compete, hopping on planes to destinations like the Bahamas and Costa Rica just to sit in the games. Wasn't all smooth sailing. Joe's early poker years were a wild ride. He'd often spend 20 hours a day glued to his computer, grinding hand after hand and riding out massive swings. Some days, he'd be up or down $20,000 to $30,000 in a single session. For a teenager, those numbers didn't even feel real. More like he was living in some alternate world where chips instantly turned into life-changing money. The stakes, the talent, and the sheer opportunity were too big to walk away from. So Joe Cotta ditched his backup plan and went all in on poker. And that was just the beginning. What came next would not only cement his name in poker history, but also prove that the gamble he took as a teenager was worth every risk. In 2009, Joe Cotta finally turned 21, the magic number that made him legal to play live poker in the United States. And where else would he head first but Las Vegas? He moved into a house full of poker grinders, surrounded himself with players chasing the same dream, and even linked up with Dean Hamrick, a respected pro from East Lansing who had already made his mark. By the time the 2009 World Series of Poker main event came around, Cotta was already a beast online, grinding out 2,000 hands a day and pocketing over $500,000 in winnings between late 2008 and November 2009. But even the best hit walls. Right before poker's biggest stage, he went through a brutal $150,000 downswing. Things got so rough, he couldn't even cover the $10,000 buy-in himself. That's when Cliff Josephy and Eric Haber stepped in, two big names who agreed to back him in exchange for half his winnings. As it turned out, that deal would prove to be one of the smartest bets they ever made. The 2009 main event was massive, pulling in 6,494 players. Cotta sat down on day 1C and came out swinging. By the end of the day, he was the overall chip leader. Riding that momentum, he told his friend Justin Lucial Peachy, "I'm finally getting my run good." And he wasn't kidding. There were bumps, of course. At one point, Jamie Robbins cracked his pocket aces with pocket tens for a pot worth 3.5 million chips. Most players would unravel after that, but Cotta barely blinked. He kept pushing, kept attacking, even challenging Phil Ivey, one of the most feared players in the world, on multiple occasions. By the time the November 9 were set, Cotta held 13,215,000 chips, fifth place going into the break. The final table itself was a spectacle. You had legends like Ivy, complete unknowns like Logger Darvin Moon, and, in the middle of it all, a 21-year-old kid with a crew of yellow-shirted supporters and one of the sharpest minds in poker, Cliff Johnny Backs Josephy, in his corner. What followed was a marathon, 17.5 hours of poker. Cotta clawed his way to the end, knocking out France's Antoine Sout in third place in absolutely gut-wrenching fashion. First, he cracked Sout's pocket queens with a miracle 2 on the flop while holding pocket deuces.
River card is a 6, and yet another big double up for Joe Cotta.
Then, moments later, his ace-king hit a king on the river to finish the job.
That did not just happen. Joe Cotta did it again.
Sout was gone, and only Darvin Moon stood between Cotta and history. Heads-up play was a war. Cotta started with a 2-1 chip lead, but Moon wasn't going quietly. They traded haymakers, stacks swinging back and forth. Then came the pivotal hand. Kata raised $3 million pre-flop. Moon called, and the flop came 10 of clubs, 5 of diamonds, 9 of hearts. Both checked. The turn brought another 10, and this time, Kata bet $3 million. Out of nowhere, Moon shoved all in, covering Kata's entire stack. The room went silent. After a long tank, Kata made the call with Jack-9 for 2 pair, ahead of Moon's straight draw with 7-8. The river bricked, and Kata doubled up to take back control. The crowd erupted. He was back in the driver's seat.
The river card is a tray! Joe Kata doubles up!
Finally, the decisive hand arrived. Kata opened with a raise to $3 million.
And a standard raise now to $3 million.
Moon re-raised to $8 million.
He will make it $8 million to stick around.
And Kata shoved all in.
All in.
Now Kata is the aggressor trying to put Darvin Moon all in.
Moon snap called.
Call.
The room froze. Kata revealed pocket nines. Moon showed Queen Jack of diamonds, a classic coin flip for the championship. The flop came 8 of clubs, 2 of clubs, 7 of spades. Safe for Kata. The turn brought the king of hearts. Still good. And then the river. The 7 of clubs. No queen, no jack, no flush. It was over.
Darvin Moon needs a queen or a jack, or Joe Kata will be the main event champ.
And that 7 will end it!
At just 21 years old, Joe Kata had toppled the field, beaten the logger from Maryland, and made history as the youngest main event champion the World Series of Poker had ever seen. His agent gave him a new nickname, The Kid, linking him forever to the late great Stu Ungar. However, Joe's story didn't stop with his 2009 main event win. It was just the beginning. In 2012, he proved he wasn't some one-hit wonder, finishing second in the WSOP 1500 no-limit hold'em event and pocketing $412,424. The momentum carried into 2013 with 2 more deep runs, both fourth-place finishes worth over $240,000. But it was 2014 when he truly silenced the doubters. Kata captured his second WSOP bracelet in the $10,000 Six Max No Limit Hold'em Championship, outlasting elite names like Eric Lindgren, Martin Jacobson, and J.C. Tran. The win cemented his place as more than the kid who won young. He was now a legitimate force in the poker world. Then came 2018, the year that would redefine his legacy.
Tonight, the 2018 World Series of Poker main event final table begins. The last stage of a seemingly endless poker journey.
Kata started off strong by winning the $3,000 no-limit hold'em shootout, defeating former main event champion Joe McKeehan in the late stages to secure his third bracelet and $226,218. A few weeks later, he struck gold again in The Closer, the $1,500 no-limit hold'em event with a $1 million guarantee. That fourth bracelet came with a payday of $612,886, pushing his career WSOP earnings over $13 million. But even those victories weren't the highlight. That same summer, he became the first former main event champion since Dan Harrington in 2004 to make another final table. Back in 2009, Kata had won as a 21-year-old kid at a time when poker looked completely different. No GTO strategies, fewer high rollers, and an online scene still thriving in the US. Fast forward nearly a decade, and he returned to the main event final table not as a lucky newcomer, but as a seasoned veteran with the respect of the poker community. His path wasn't easy. On day 1C, he was nearly out, dwindling from 50,000 chips to just 9,000 before bagging a meager 16,500. By day 3, he finally started to build momentum, mixing in sharp bluffs and timely hands to climb the ranks. Against all odds, he powered through to day 7, securing a seat at the final table. Over 3 tense days, Kata battled the best in the world. On day 9, he survived down to the final 5 before his short stack left him little room to maneuver. He bowed out in 5th place, but not before locking up $2.15 million and making history as the only post-poker boom champion to return to a main event final table. His performance also landed him third in the WSOP Player of the Year race, behind Sean Deeb and Ben Yu. Beyond the felt, Kata has been just as outspoken as he is competitive. He has long championed the legalization of online poker, arguing that the game is about logic, math, and decision-making, not luck. For him, poker isn't just a career. It's a passion worth protecting for future generations. And with 4 bracelets, over $13 million in WSOP winnings, and a historic double final table run, Joe Kata's story is far from over. He's not just the kid anymore. He's a poker legend still writing his legacy. 7 players, 7 journeys, from Jerry Yang's miracle run to Joe Kata's legendary longevity, from unknown amateurs to immortal champions. Their stories prove that in poker, as in life, it's not where you start that matters. It's about the heart to keep fighting, the courage to trust your instincts, and the wisdom to know that sometimes the most dangerous player at the table is the one nobody sees coming. If these stories of impossible triumph left you inspired, then you're in the right place. Dive deeper into the legends of the felt. Subscribe now and never miss another tale from poker's greatest underdogs.